Today we are talking to Sheetal Sheth, who is an award-winning actor, writer, and producer, and she starred in over 20 features and many TV shows, and she's earned a very loyal and international following. She's the author of the popular Anjali children's book series.
Anjali.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
even better. She's also the author of the Anjali book series. And it's the first and only of its age group featuring an Indian American girl hero. And by the way, the Always Anjali was the grand prize winner for the Purple Dragonfly Children's Book Awards. So the reason that I am talking to Sheetal today is because for me, she's here because she's been working in the industry and she's definitely a multi-hyphenate creator and a shining example of tapping into your talent. So Sheetal, you took your own life experiences and you turned them into books that are so heartfelt and necessary and topics that weren't even being covered. So can you give us a little bit of hi and where you're from?
Yes. Hi. And thank you for having me. I'm so happy to speak to you. Yeah, it's funny. The first book, so just to put some context into it, I've been working with kids my whole life. Like I took education classes when I was in college. I have a minor in education. I've been teaching in some way, shape, or form. And if I wasn't an actress, I would be an elementary school teacher. It is something I love tremendously. So children's books have always been in my mind, but obviously I was doing other things. And then there was a point in my life when I started having kids and I was pregnant with my first, and I was looking at books to bring home. It was very exciting because I love books in terms of what's the library I want, for my child. And I had this moment in a bookstore where I was just like, these are the exact same ones that were there when I was growing up. Like, really? What's happening? Like, how have we not, in all of these years, over 30 years, I mean, there were a few here and there, but they were still not great, nor did they represent the world that we lived in. And all of the things that I think now is something we all talk about quite easily, but this was over 10 years ago. And so there was just not the impetus for representation that we have now at that time. And I was like, there's no way my kids are growing up without seeing themselves as a hero of the story. And I always think about the fact that like I grew up on predominantly, white dominated stories. And I was fine and I liked them. Like I related. So this idea that like you can't relate or connect to characters that don't look like you is ridiculous. And so I just started writing. I knew nothing about publishing. I reached out to people in my network. Everyone was like, I don't know what to do, anybody in my life. And I just wrote. And then after a year, I finally got someone to read it and give me notes and kind of went back and forth, found a literary agent, got it out there. And here we are all these years later. The books have done far better than I could have ever imagined. I can't stop writing them. I love it. I love the character. I love the world that I've created for her. The response has been unbelievable, but clearly I've tapped into something because it's doing exceptionally well. And I can't write as fast as they want me to, because it's like you hope that like the one book does well enough and now everyone just wants more, which is such a blessing. But it really was about being authentic. And so all of the stories that Anjali is kind of the each narrative is completely based on either my life, my friends' lives, things that I see with my kids. It's a mixture of all of those things. And they're straight from the heart. And I think that's what comes across because they are very much authentic stories.
Yes. And that brings us to your most recent release, which is Making Happy.
Yes.
And this book is just so beautiful. And so, again, it's a very necessary story that isn't out there and definitely not as beautifully done as what you and the illustrator have put together. Can you talk a little bit about Making Happy?
Yeah, thank you. It's so interesting. So I, a few years ago was diagnosed with breast cancer. And at that time, then I had two kids. And at the time they were 2 and 4, so babies. And I love using books as an icebreaker, as a way to talk about all the things. And I firmly believe that there is no such thing as too young to have certain conversations in the right language and in the right context, because our kids are being bombarded by so much and
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. On a side note, I always say to people, like, you tell me that they can be gunned down by guns in schools, but they can't talk about racism and bullying and all the things. Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for books about illness that I could bring home to my child, because I was having a hard time processing it. And I know they were having a hard time. And how do we deal with this as a family? And
Mhm.
again, couldn't find anything in the bookstore. So I was like, oh, I'm in publishing. I know people. I'm going to find some recommendations.
Right.
Emailed every single person I knew in publishing, which was a lot. And every single one of them was like, no, 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 we don't talk about that stuff.
Oh,
And I said, what
really?
don't you talk? I was like, what do you mean? You don't talk about mental health? You don't talk about processing big feelings? They're like, it's too depressing. We like to make happy books. And I go, well, I like to make happy books too, but I also like to make books about real things.
Mhm.
And I like to make books that talk about things that happen, and which family is not touched by something that we have to teach kids how to kind of go through and cope and be resilient.
Mhm.
And so for me, it was very, and then, so then I was going through treatment, and I was in a world of well-intentioned, be strong, you're going to get through it, things happen for a reason,
Yeah.
all the most unhelpful things you say to someone that's going through a hard time, which I'm sure you've experienced.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just need to feel what I'm feeling. And that the book really came from that idea of like, how do you process big things? Why is it not okay? Like, as I'm sure you've
Right.
seen this with kids, the minute a kid starts crying or getting upset, I don't even like the word tantrum, when something's happening, they're
Mhm.
not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. So let's find a way through it. Let's teach them. We want them to be resilient, we want them to get through it. So
Yeah.
the tools are, how do you process? And so for me, Making Happy is very much that book that gives everyone permission to have whatever feelings they're having. And then how do you get through it? How do you make your happy? How do you kind of obviously accept what's going on, but also get to the other side? And so that book came from just wanting that book for myself, and
Yeah.
here we are.
Yes. The way that you handle the confusion that a child goes through, and things are not like they were, and that ensuing grief that they don't know how to process, like all of this, the way that you lay out the story is very much about those big emotions and not knowing what to do with them, and then bringing them down to a workable level, like making happy events within the family. It's just very powerful that way. And yeah, so thank you for that.
No,
And
thank you. But I think that's right. That's what I mean. Like, there's nothing that you can't talk to your kids about. It's just distilling it down. Like,
mhm,
what's the thing? How do you distill down the thing so that you can talk about it? Because these things happen. They're going to be seeing things and talking about things, and we have to give them language for it.
yes, you have a lot of books to write ahead of you. There's so many things that we need to be talking to our children and our teenagers about, even that outside of a news scroll, there we're not really talking about it at a level that they're allowed to process it and to be open about it.
Well, can I
um
tell you this, Dawn? It's so interesting you say that. And I've felt this in like all of the different things that I do in my acting world and this world and all the like all I've often been met with, that's not how we do things. And I'm
huh,
like, okay, but this is how I'm going to do things. And I'm touching on something. And maybe we've done things for one way for so long. Maybe it's time to revisit that. Maybe it's time to rethink that. Because I cannot tell you how many kids, because I do tons of school visits where I'm talking to kids and I go into elementary schools and have these conversations with all my books, who say to me, thank you for talking about something real that I'm actually dealing with in my life.
wow.
Thank you for giving me language and tools, and have a story which then allows me to share my story. Like, all the other stuff is fine, unicorns, dinosaurs, superheroes, all that fine. But this is realistic fiction that really allows kids to see themselves and connect in ways because they're dealing with the stuff.
Mhm, mhm. um this is a side note. When my daughter was growing up, she was living in two households, which is something that I had never really planned. And there was one single book out there that we
Mm.
read over and over. It was called Priscilla Twice, where her parents were divorcing and she would have to go to two households. We clung to that book because it was the
Mm.
only one that put it in terms of, I know you have to have a toothbrush here and a toothbrush there. And it was one of those profound books that we shared growing up. Um, the thing that you said about we don't do it that way. What I love that topic. We're always being met with that. And the industry has changed radically in that I've been in it for 30 years now. And there's, I think, more room than ever before for people to come in different ways if they want to be actors, writers, directors, that they are creating their own content. They're coming in from a lot of different ways that weren't available before. And I think there's generations now that are doing it the way that it was not done before. And I think that's a huge benefit for all of us to see ourselves represented, you know.
Well, and also giving us a real voice. Like, it's one thing to obviously like green light the things and say you're going to make the things, but give us the support that you would give anyone else. Let us do our thing, you know? And so it's interesting because and I also find it so interesting because I've been producing so much, whether it be with books or movies or whatever. There is much about this industry that I did not know as an actor. And just the things people ask for. Like, I know this is like we're talking about making money. I'm just like, you can ask for that. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I get like the stuff from people's agents, and I'm like, I have not asked for any of these things ever. And I have just been like floored at like just I don't know, these young people who good for them. Part
Yes.
of me is like, really? And then part
Yeah.
of me is like, really? Wow. Okay, go for it, man. If you can get that, get that. But
Yeah.
I'm a producer who's like been on the other side of it for so long when the industry was very different. So I really have to do a lot of rethinking, even when I advocate for myself, because I
Yeah.
just am not used to asking for things.
Well, this has given you such an interesting perspective. Like now that you are producing, did you say you were directing or you've
No, producing.
no producing, and then you're creating your own original material?
Yes.
And being a producer, what has that informed you that you wish you'd known as an actor?
Well, I will tell you, what's nice about it is I actually really enjoy producing and I'm really good at it. And I think I was naturally, that's just my personality. But I wish I had known as an actor how, like, the advocacy that people have, the agency in terms of for themselves, and just creating a space that was safe
Mhm.
and allowed them to do their best work. Like, I was always under like, look, I'm the child of immigrants who came here and were just happy with whatever scraps they were given to them. They worked really hard and they were like, don't question the status quo. We're here, we're happy.
Mhm.
And so that's how I was raised. And so they're like, work hard, keep your head to the ground, and you'll be fine type thing. And so, and then I'm in an industry that, like, obviously work is up and down and you don't know if you're going to get a next job. So I've never
Right.
been somebody to kind of challenge the status quo. And I should have more, I should
Yeah.
have. And there were things that happened that were unacceptable many, many, many times.
Mhm.
And I didn't speak up. And people are always surprised when I say that because I am such a vocal kind of
Yeah.
assertive person and they see that, which I am. But I didn't know how to do that then. I didn't know how to kind of navigate that back in the 90s and early 2000s because it wasn't something that was the norm.
That's right. It certainly wasn't. I mean, with the Me Too movement in 2017, that
Yeah.
changed everything radically, and for the better. For the better.
Yes. Yes.
um, and that idea of the status quo, I think that's something that we all brought with us in the 90s and early 2000s. That these newer generations are coming in full force, and they're not quite as hindered as we were. And we were taught, get that job, land that job, keep your head down, don't, be a team player, just do what is expected of you as well as you can, and then that's all that you can promise. And it's very different now.
Hmm.
It's just sort of wide open, and you make your career from many different angles. And yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I'm just, like I said, I'm equal parts awe and surprise. I'm just like, okay, okay. I gotta like take some notes on this because I'm just like, wow, you people really got it together. I mean, it's amazing. And there's part of me that like respects it. And then part of me is like, oh my gosh, it is funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also,
Um,
we live in a world of social media that did not exist when we were kind of starting out. And so that has also changed the game
yeah,
for the positive, but there are pros and cons.
that's right. There's a lot of pros and cons. The ability to reach out to people directly is really something that I think people are building their entire careers on that, which is
Yes.
amazing. We didn't have that. Is there, and this is sort of out of left field, but is there any advice you would give actors specifically that of what to do in those in between times just so that they can keep the lights on, basically?
Yeah. I think staying creative is really important. And for me, when I was going through cancer treatment and literally could not physically work as an actress, although I tried because
Oh,
I'm one of those people, um, I needed to be creative. I needed an outlet. And I wrote more books in those 2 years than I ever have because I was like, I needed that outlet. And so for me, I'm never without something creative. And I think for everybody to find, it's not just about acting, you can create your own work. It's easier than ever to create your own content. And
yeah.
there's so many avenues for you to just put it out there. So I
Mhm.
don't think there's any reason why you can't be working or flexing those muscles, whether it be writing, filming, content, all of the things. I think finding other things that excite you that is not just, okay, go on audition and book it and get the job, but other ways of taking onus on your creativity is, I think, the smartest way to keep your head from going crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I promised that I was going to keep this interview short and sweet. And one thing that I want to end with is on your website, and I'm going to have this information available to the viewers through the emails and the promo period that we're going to come into in a few days. Oh, they're able to download, let me see, was it like um, some of your guides for parenting? Let me see what we
Yes,
have.
there's activity books, there's parent and teacher discussion guides for all of the books, there's
Great.
coloring pages, there's activity. So there's all this stuff that's free that you can download with for all of the books, all three of them. And especially if you want to talk to your child about the language, there's prompts, there's all the guides and conversation things that you can have just right there for you to take what you want, leave what you don't want.
Oh, that's perfect. That's so helpful. Um,
Yes.
I so appreciate your spending the time here, and it's so good to see you again. And
Likewise, I'm so happy to talk.
yeah, thank you so much. And I will be talking to you all the time as it happens. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.